My name is Olivia Bennett, and I'm 29 years old. Looking back now, people always ask me the same question. If he wasn't ready to marry you, weren't there warning signs? I wish the answer were yes. I wish there had been obvious lies, constant arguments, or unmistakable red flags I could point to. Instead, our relationship looked like the kind everyone secretly hoped for. That's exactly why losing it hurt so much. Ethan Carter and I met at a party neither of us actually wanted to attend. Our friends practically dragged us there. His roommates insisted he needed to stop hiding in his apartment after another exhausting week at work, while my coworkers refused to take no for an answer when they organized the gathering. I remember standing near the kitchen island with a plastic cup of soda, already planning my excuse to leave early. Then, Ethan walked over beside me. He looked toward the speakers and leaned closer. I've heard elevator music with more personality. I laughed before I could stop myself. For the next 4 hours, neither of us paid much attention to the party. Instead, we talked. We joked about terrible movies we'd both somehow watched to the end. Embarrassing childhood stories neither of us usually admitted out loud. Vacations that looked amazing online but turned out disappointingly ordinary in real life. He told me about accidentally locking himself outside his apartment wearing slippers. I nearly cried laughing. I told him about a disastrous camping trip where raccoons stole nearly everything our family brought. By the end of the night, exchanging phone numbers felt less like taking a chance and more like continuing a conversation neither of us wanted to end. A few weeks later, Ethan became my boyfriend. The first 2 years felt effortless. Not perfect. Real. He remembered tiny details most people forgot. The coworker, who constantly interrupted me during meetings. My favorite bakery tucked away on a quiet side street. The strange habit I had of rereading mystery novels even after knowing exactly who the killer was. Those things sound insignificant on paper. They aren't. They're the quiet moments that slowly convince you someone truly sees you. We had countless little traditions. Whenever one of us had an awful week, we'd order the greasiest takeout we could find, deliberately choose the worst-rated movie online, and spend the entire evening making sarcastic commentary instead of paying attention to the plot. It was ridiculous. It was childish. It always worked. Some couples survive because of grand romantic gestures. We survived because we could laugh together after exhausting days. That mattered. As time passed, I quietly began imagining a future beyond weekend dinners and shared holidays. Not in a vague someday sort of way. A real future. Marriage. A home. Children. Growing old beside the same person. I didn't rush into the idea. Instead, I started preparing for nearly a year. I quietly saved money every month. I skipped unnecessary purchases, worked overtime whenever possible, even postponed replacing my aging laptop because I wanted everything about the proposal to feel intentional. I wasn't just buying a ring. I was preparing for the next chapter of our lives. We'd already talked about marriage more than once. Ethan had smiled while telling me he couldn't imagine building a life with anyone else. Whenever friends got engaged, he'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "We'll get there." Those words stayed with me. So when I finally bought the ring, I wasn't nervous. I was excited. I chose the beach where we'd shared our very first date. Back then, we'd both been broke. Our picnic consisted of grocery store sandwiches, cheap chips, and 2 bottles of sparkling water. We stayed until the sun disappeared beneath the horizon because neither of us wanted the evening to end. Returning there felt perfect. I planned everything carefully. Just the two of us. No strangers watching. No restaurant audience waiting to applaud. No unnecessary spectacle. Only us. The weather couldn't have been better. The sky slowly melted into shades of orange, pink, and gold. Exactly the kind of sunset Ethan always stopped to admire. We walked barefoot along the shoreline, talked about work, our families, vacation ideas for the following summer. All the while, the ring rested inside my jacket pocket. I could feel its weight with every step. Finally, the moment felt right. I stopped walking, reached for his hand. My heart hammered so loudly, I was certain he could hear it. "Ethan," I whispered, smiling through my nerves. "These last 4 years have been the happiest of my life." He smiled back. "I don't want to keep imagining a future anymore," I continued. I want us to start living it. Then I lowered myself onto one knee, pulled out the ring, and asked him to marry me. He didn't answer. Not immediately. He simply stared at me. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes. Then, "Entenda." Softly, he spoke, "Olivia." His voice trembled. "I do want to marry you." Hope exploded inside my chest. Just not right now. Everything around me became strangely quiet. The waves were still crashing against the shore. Children were still laughing farther down the beach. But somehow all the sound disappeared. I remained kneeling for another second before forcing myself to stand. I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. "Oh." I swallowed. "Okay." He immediately reached for my hands. "I'm just not ready yet." I waited. Certain more explanation would follow. It didn't. "I just need more time." How much time, I almost asked. Instead, I stayed silent. I didn't want him to feel pressured. I didn't want to turn one disappointing moment into an argument. So we walked back to the car, pretending everything was normal. We even stopped for dinner afterward, talked about ordinary things, work, television, weekend plans. Neither of us mentioned the ring sitting heavily inside my purse. That night, lying awake beside him, I replayed every conversation we'd ever had about marriage. Had I misunderstood him? Had I rushed? Was my timing wrong? Maybe he had simply panicked. Maybe proposing had caught him off guard. Maybe he really did just need a little more time. Those explanations comforted me enough to fall asleep. Looking back now, that was the first lie I told myself. Not because Ethan lied to me, because I convinced myself silence meant hope, and over the next year, that single belief would quietly begin unraveling everything we had built. For the next few weeks, I kept waiting for Ethan to bring it up. Not because I wanted to pressure him. I simply believed that once the surprise of the proposal wore off, we'd finally have the conversation we hadn't managed to have on the beach. Maybe he'd explain what "not right now" actually meant. Maybe he'd tell me he wanted another 6 months. Maybe another year. Any answer would have been easier than silence. But the conversation never came. Neither of us mentioned the proposal again. Life simply resumed. We went back to work every morning, spent weekends grocery shopping together, met friends for dinner, argued playfully over what movie to watch on Friday nights. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside me, everything had. Every engagement announcement suddenly felt different. Whenever someone posted a ring on social media, I smiled, left a congratulatory comment, then quietly closed my phone. At family gatherings, my mother would grin and ask, "So, when are you two making it official?" Before I could answer, Ethan would casually laugh. "We're taking our time." Everyone smiled. The subject moved on. Only I noticed how tightly my fingers wrapped around my glass afterward. Months passed that way. Sometimes I'd catch Ethan watching newly married couples at restaurants. I'd wonder what he was thinking. Was he imagining us, or imagining a future without me? I never asked. Instead, I kept building explanations inside my own head. Maybe proposing had simply frightened him. Maybe he wanted to become more financially secure first. Maybe he wanted us to travel more before settling down. Maybe. There were endless maybes. Each one bought me another week of hope. One evening, we attended an engagement party for one of our closest friends. The groom couldn't stop talking about how nervous he'd been before proposing. Everyone laughed while his fiancée showed off her ring. I watched Ethan from across the table. He smiled. He congratulated them. He even joked about how terrible he would be at hiding a surprise. Then our eyes met. For a brief second, neither of us spoke. There was something in his expression. Guilt, sadness, regret. Or maybe I only imagined it because I wanted to. The moment disappeared almost immediately. Someone changed the subject. The dinner continued, but I couldn't stop replaying that single glance. That night, lying awake beside him again, I realized something uncomfortable. I had become afraid of asking simple questions, not because I didn't deserve answers, because I was terrified of what those answers might be. It was easier to invent hopeful explanations than risk hearing a painful truth. Nearly a full year passed. One Saturday morning, I was eating cereal while Ethan watered the ridiculous collection of houseplants that had slowly taken over our apartment. He laughed when our cat knocked another tiny succulent off the windowsill. So much for that one. I laughed too. Then, while sweeping up the spilled soil, an unexpected thought crossed my mind. Maybe the beach had been too quiet, too private. Maybe he wanted something more memorable, something grand, something impossible to forget. The idea stayed with me all day. By evening, I'd convinced myself it was worth one final attempt. If he'd never actually said no, then maybe I simply hadn't asked the right way. Over the following weeks, I planned everything carefully. Again, this time, I reserved a beautiful botanical garden filled with fountains, roses, and winding stone paths. It was Ethan's favorite place in the city. He loved plants so much that every windowsill in our apartment had become a miniature greenhouse, if anywhere represented him. It was there. I secretly contacted our closest friends. Every single one agreed to help. Candles lined the pathways. Fresh roses surrounded the fountain. Tiny lights hung between the trees, making the entire garden glow after sunset. When I arrived early to check everything, I couldn't stop smiling. It was beautiful. Exactly how I'd imagined it. We had dinner first at a nearby restaurant. Ethan seemed relaxed. He laughed throughout the meal, reached across the table to steal fries from my plate, teased me for checking my phone too often, while secretly making sure everything at the garden was ready. For the first time in months, my anxiety faded. Maybe this was finally it. Maybe the waiting had been worth it. After dinner, I suggested we take a walk. He agreed, immediately. As we entered the garden, his eyes widened. The candles, the roses, the glowing lights, everything stood exactly as I'd planned. He squeezed my hand. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Hope returned so suddenly, it almost hurt. We stopped beside the fountain. I took a deep breath. Ethan. He already knew. I could see it on his face. Still. I smiled. "I've loved you every single day these past 4 years. I've imagined growing old with you. I've imagined building a family with you. I don't need perfection. I just need certainty." Once again, Net. Once again, I held out the same ring. "I love you. Will you marry me?" His eyes filled with tears. For one impossible second, I thought everything would finally be okay. Instead, he whispered the words I had spent an entire year praying never to hear again. Not just yet. My heart didn't shatter this time. It simply became very, very quiet. Slowly, I stood. There was no pretending anymore. No forced smile. No rehearsed reassurance. I looked directly into his eyes. "Ethan. What are you waiting for?" He wiped away tears. "I just need more time." I nodded slowly. "No. You've already had time." He looked down. I took another step closer. "Is there someone else?" His head snapped up immediately. "No. I swear. I've never cheated on you." I believed him. That wasn't the problem. So I asked the question I should have asked on the beach a year earlier. "Then answer me honestly. Are you sure about me?" The garden fell completely silent. The fountain continued flowing behind us. The candles flickered softly in the evening breeze. Ethan stared at his hands. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. 5 seconds. 10. 15. He couldn't answer. And in that silence, I finally understood everything I had refused to admit for an entire year. His silence lasted only a few seconds, but those few seconds answered every question I'd been carrying for the past year. I didn't need another explanation. I didn't need another promise. If someone truly knows they want to spend the rest of their life with you, they don't freeze when asked a simple question. They answer. I slowly lowered the ring. "Ethan," I said quietly, "I think we've been talking about 2 different things." He finally looked up. "I've been talking about building a future together. You've been talking about maybe..." His face crumpled. "No. That's not fair." "Then help me understand." I sat on the stone edge surrounding the fountain, suddenly exhausted. "I've spent 4 years loving you. I proposed twice. I've waited an entire year because I believed your "not right now" actually meant someday. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. But every time I ask what you're waiting for, you can't tell me. He rubbed both hands over his face. I love you, Olivia. I know you do. His voice cracked. I'm scared. Scared of what? He hesitated again. I don't know. That answer hurt more than if he'd named another woman. Because there wasn't another woman. There wasn't some secret betrayal. There wasn't a hidden life. There was simply uncertainty. And uncertainty had quietly become the third person in our relationship. I don't want to make the wrong decision, he whispered. I nodded slowly. And that's exactly it. He frowned. If marrying me feels like it might be the wrong decision. I forced myself to finish the sentence. Then I'm not your right decision. Tears rolled down his cheeks. No, Olivia. I do want this. When? I asked gently. In 6 months. A year. 5 years. He stared at the ground. I don't know. For the first time in our relationship, I stopped trying to rescue the conversation. I stopped searching for better interpretations. I stopped filling the silence with hope. Instead, I accepted it. I can't keep waiting. His head jerked upward. What? I love you. I probably always will. But I can't spend the rest of my life waiting for someone to become certain that I'm enough. He grabbed my hands. Please. Don't do this. We can figure it out. I've been trying to figure it out for a year. I can't do another one. His breathing became uneven. Then, suddenly, the words came rushing out. Fine. I'll marry you. My heart skipped. Not because I was happy. Because I instantly understood why he'd said it. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't relieved. He wasn't excited. He was terrified. Terrified of losing me. Olivia. I'll marry you. We'll start planning tomorrow. Please don't leave. I closed my eyes. This was everything I dreamed of hearing. And somehow, it felt completely empty. When I opened my eyes again, I shook my head. No. He stared at me. What do you mean? No, I don't want a proposal accepted out of panic. His grip loosened. I mean it. I know you think you do. But 5 minutes ago you couldn't tell me whether you were sure about me. You only became sure after I said I was leaving. His shoulders slumped. Neither of us spoke. The fountain continued splashing behind us. Our friends, waiting farther down the garden path to celebrate what they believed would be an engagement, had no idea everything was falling apart. I slowly removed the ring from its box, slipped it back into my purse. Then I stood. I hope one day you figure out what you're looking for. His voice broke. Please don't walk away. I looked at him one last time. I already stayed 1 year longer than I should have. Then I walked out of the botanical garden alone. The next several days blurred together. I couldn't bear going back to the apartment we'd shared for 4 years. Instead, I called my oldest friend, Daniel. He answered before the phone finished ringing. I need somewhere to stay. He didn't ask questions. You know where the spare key is. That was all. Daniel had always been that kind of friend. He never forced conversations before I was ready. He simply made space. The first night, we ordered pizza, watched an awful action movie neither of us paid attention to. Neither of us mentioned Ethan. The silence somehow felt kinder than sympathy. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the beach, then the garden, then Ethan staring silently at his hands. I replayed everything over and over, trying to find the exact moment where I'd made the wrong choice. Eventually, I stopped searching. Because every version ended the same way. I had loved, honestly. I had communicated honestly. I had waited patiently. There was nothing else I could have given. The messages started 2 days later. Not from Ethan. From everyone else. His friends. His parents. Mutual friends. Almost every message sounded the same. You ended a 4-year relationship because he wasn't ready. You're throwing everything away over one disagreement. Marriage isn't a race. One message even read, "You're acting immature." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Immature. I'd proposed twice, waited an entire year, asked one simple question, "Are you sure about me?" And somehow, I was the unreasonable one. The most painful message came from Ethan's longtime friend. Melissa, you were always the safe choice for him. Maybe now he'll finally find the person he's really meant to be with. I read it 3 times. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of hurting, it clarified everything. Safe choice. Not first choice. Not certain choice. Just safe. I deleted the message without replying. That evening, Daniel finally looked over at me while we were eating takeout. You know what? If someone needs 4 years and still can't answer whether you're the person they want forever? He shrugged. They already answered. I quietly nodded. For the first time since leaving the garden, I believed him. About a week later, Ethan finally called. I stared at my phone until it stopped ringing. Then it rang again, and again. On the 4th call, I answered. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he sighed. I miss you. I closed my eyes. I know. I've been thinking. So have I. I was wrong. His voice sounded tired. I should have answered you. You did answer me. No. I should have said yes. I leaned against the kitchen counter inside Daniel's apartment. Ethan. If your answer only came after I walked away, then it wasn't really a yes. It was, I swear it was, no. It was fear. He became quiet. I don't want to lose you. I believe that I'll marry you. We can start over. I'll do counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Every sentence hurt because part of me still loved him. A part of me desperately wanted to believe him. But another part, the healthier part, finally understood something I'd ignored for too long. A marriage should begin with excitement, not desperation. I hear everything you're saying. I told him gently. But I can't spend the rest of my life wondering whether you married me because you chose me. Or because you were afraid of being alone. Neither of us spoke. Then, quietly, he whispered, I'm sorry. Suwangi. We stayed on the phone another minute. No yelling, no blame, just 2 people, accepting that love alone hadn't been enough. When we hung up, I knew it was the last real conversation we'd ever have. About 10 days after the botanical garden, a short text appeared on my phone. I understand now. I'm sorry. I hope someday someone loves you the way you deserve to be loved. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied with only 4 words. Take care of yourself. That was the end. No more calls. No more late-night messages. No dramatic attempts to change my mind. Only silence. A few days later, I returned to the apartment while Ethan was at work. Walking through the front door felt surreal. 4 years of memories surrounded me. Pictures from vacations. Souvenirs from road trips. His favorite coffee mug sitting beside mine. Our movie blanket folded neatly across the couch. For a moment, I simply stood there. Then I started packing. Books, clothes, my grandmother's necklace, the framed photograph from our first beach trip. I deliberately left behind anything that belonged to both of us. Some memories couldn't be divided fairly. 40 minutes later, everything I owned fit into the back of my car. Before leaving, I placed my apartment key on the kitchen counter. I looked around one final time. Goodbye, I whispered. Not to the apartment, to the future I'd spent years imagining. Then I closed the door behind me. Finding my own apartment wasn't glamorous. A small 1-bedroom, quiet neighborhood, nothing luxurious. But it was mine. The first few weeks felt strange. I could leave a book open exactly where I wanted. Watch documentaries until midnight, without worrying whether someone else wanted to sleep. Spread paperwork across the dining table without apologizing. Small freedoms. Yet they reminded me every day that my life belonged to me again. The hardest adjustment wasn't loneliness. It was habit. I'd still reach for my phone after work to text Ethan about something funny I'd seen. Halfway through typing, I'd remember there was no one waiting. Saturday mornings felt especially unfamiliar. For years we'd negotiated every weekend together. Now I woke up with entire days belonging only to me. At first, that freedom felt almost overwhelming. Eventually, it became peaceful. I joined a gym, started running before work, accepted projects I'd previously turned down because they required more travel. I reconnected with old friends, I'd unintentionally neglected while building my life around one relationship. Little by little, I stopped measuring time by what I'd lost. I started measuring it by what I was becoming. Daniel checked on me often. Sometimes we'd grab coffee. Sometimes we'd simply watch a basketball game without talking much. He never tried to fix me. He simply reminded me that healing wasn't something you forced. It happened one ordinary day at a time. Several months later, Daniel convinced me to meet him at a neighborhood pool hall. "It'll be good for you," he insisted. He was right. We played several games, laughed about work, argued over impossible trick shots. For nearly 2 hours. I didn't think about Ethan once. Then Daniel suddenly froze. His eyes shifted toward the bar. "What?" He hesitated. "Ethan's here." My stomach tightened instinctively. I looked over. He was sitting with a woman. They were laughing together. She reached across the table and lightly touched his arm. He smiled. For a brief moment, I simply watched. I expected anger, jealousy, regret. Instead, I felt something completely unexpected. Relief. Not because he'd moved on, because the ache was still there, but it no longer controlled me. It had become another chapter, instead of my entire story. I turned back toward the pool table. Daniel studied my face carefully. "You okay?" I smiled. "Yeah." And for the first time, I realized I wasn't pretending. We finished our game, left without speaking to Ethan. That night, I sat alone on my apartment balcony with a cold soda in my hand. The city lights stretched across the skyline. Months earlier, I would have replayed every memory after seeing him again. Wondered if I'd made the wrong decision. Imagined different endings. This time, I simply enjoyed the quiet. Healing doesn't usually arrive in one dramatic moment. Most of the time, you realize you've healed because you stop needing answers. Looking back now, I don't think Ethan was a bad man. He never lied to me. He never betrayed me. He never stopped caring. He simply couldn't answer one question. "Are you sure about me?" And if someone can't answer that after 4 years together, no amount of patience will answer it for them. The biggest mistake I made wasn't proposing twice. It wasn't loving too deeply. It wasn't believing in us. It was spending an entire year translating silence into hope. I won't do that again. I'm nobody's backup plan. Nobody's safe choice. Nobody's maybe. The right person won't need to panic before choosing me. They'll already know. Walking away wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done. Staying after the first silence was. Leaving simply meant I had finally chosen myself.